Brian Kelly yesterday was on a teleconference with the rest of the SEC coaches, and it sounds like Armani Goodwin could be making a return to the lineup this week. Kelly said he wants to play. Our doctors have cleared him. We'll see what kind of volume we can get out of him, and hopefully it goes well during the week. It sounds like he's practicing, and it sounds like potentially he could be back in the lineup. I still believe that Josh Williams is your top back, and you're going to have to work a guy like Goodwin, even if he is ready to go this Saturday. I think you're going to have to really slow play that because, a hamstring injury for any athlete is tough to overcome. A hamstring injury for a running back is, it's very brittle. It's you got to treat it very fragile just because you have to work it in. You don't want to go out there and just sprint out of the gates and have something reoccur on you. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle Armani Goodwin in his comeback, because it feels like the running back spot, a lot like the offense, is slowly but surely finding that rhythm that we've talked about, right? We've been wondering who's the back, who's the primary guy going to be on the team. At times, I think people were urging and wanting it to be John Emery, but with Emery's, inability to protect the ball early in the season and pass protect, I think that's has kept him off the field as the primary guy. Now, you've seen flashes, just like we've seen, throughout Emery's career. And to me, he's probably the only one that can hit the home run. He's the only one that can bust a, 65, 70-yarder for you. But Josh Williams, to me, all in all, and I know we talked a little bit about this, but with the return of Armani Goodwin, how you start to see this shuffle maybe shake up, I think that Williams is the guy. Everything has to kind of be worked around him being the back, because I love Goodwin, and I thought Goodwin was in a great space before the injury, at New Mexico State. If he'd have come out of that game and he would have been healthy, I think he would probably be in the position that we're talking about Josh Williams right now.
Yep.
But what happened was the injury gave Williams an opportunity, and Williams has seized it. He's taken advantage of his opportunity, and he's run with it. Literally. And I think that the consistency and the rhythm and the momentum that this offense is finding is a formula that you really don't want to mess with. More players, more bodies, more capable dudes, feed them to me all day as far as guys that can help you on the field. Armani Goodwin is one of those guys. But as far as the primary back on this team moving forward, as long as Josh Williams stays healthy, I think he's the running back. I think he's the guy that you feature in the offense, and then, you move people around when you need them. Put Emery in there on situational downs where, you want to use him, and if Goodwin can get back to full strength to where he was, then you work him into the lineup. Noah Cain, I don't know exactly what's going on with Cain, because Cain hasn't been, for a lack of a better term, it's not like he's been bad where he doesn't play. You know what I mean? Like, when given a chance, I think he fits a role. He's not going to hit a home run. He's not going to shake anybody up. He's got
tough yards.
He's got a specific role to him that I think he plays.
Short yardage.
Yeah, goal line
situation.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Works. Everybody has a role in that room.
Yeah, and I think that that's what slowly has played out here over the last couple of weeks, is people have found their footing. People have found their role. Yeah, and look, I don't want to overreact to Saturday and expect that to be the norm, but I think those types of performances for athletes can really unlock the playmaking ability that you have. I think that, a lot like we talked about over the last couple of weeks, it's a jump shooter in basketball. when it's not falling, get to the free throw line or go make a layup. Just watch the ball go through the net. If you're a quarterback and you're struggling with taking shots or just letting the ball go because you're worried that bad things are going to happen, well, if you get into a scenario where you do the opposite, right, where you let it go and you just put it up in the air and see what happens, and the outcome is you go on the road and you win a huge game, and everybody who's been talked about that's been left out of the game plan has been included. Brian Thomas, Jeray Jenkins, Keyshawn Boutie, all these guys are now making plays. And look at the energy that it happens. I mean, how good was that video that populated for Keyshawn? And I don't think that was intentional. I don't think that was on purpose. I think that was heat of the moment. Keyshawn taking the opportunity to be a leader at halftime, and you can see the eyeballs of the guys around him. He's not hitting his chest. He's not yelling in the back. He's just kind of a soft-spoken superstar. And when he speaks, people shut up. And people follow. And a lot like Brian Kelly said in the postgame, I mean, how good of coaching and leadership was that from Kelly? What do you think Keyshawn's sitting there and think? You can see it. The camera catches it. As Brian Kelly is telling, the team and Keyshawn, we need more of that. We need you to be that guy. We love when you're that person. You can see Keyshawn's shoulders are kind of like standing up. I mean, his head, he's getting, prideful. I mean, his eyes, you can see that, like, challenge accepted, coach. I got you. All of that stuff, man, I thought was just kind of a residual effect of getting the ball early. Let him touch it in the first 5 minutes of the game. Let him make easy catches, and then you'll get the difficult catches from him. So, I mean, and once that happens, I would imagine that Jaden Daniels has this feel of, okay, like, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world if it goes bad for a minute, because you're talented enough around you where you can get back. Right? Interesting to see what Caskey has to say about LSU's matchup against Ole Miss tomorrow. Because when you look at the matchup, right, this rush offense, it's different. It's different than what Kiffin has brought to Baton Rouge or against LSU since he's been in Ole Miss. Even going back to when he was calling plays for Alabama in the league. And you would see him year in, year out. He wanted to creatively embarrass you, right? Like, that's Kiffin's ultimate goal as a play caller. It was perceived as arrogance and egotistical when he started, and then it became, like scientific and surgical once you saw it working. Now, with what he has on this specific team, he is more of like a old school style game plan where they're coming in and they're just going to run it. They're going to run the football until they can't, and they're probably the best rush offense in the country. And the way that they do it is through this outside-inside zone attack where they've got athletes that are offensive linemen. Like they've got big guys that can get out, run, pull, play one-on-one, play in space. And then you've got guys like Zach Evans, who's a really good back, kind of reading off of that. And a lot of the times you see Evans run, he's kind of like running by himself. Mm-hmm. So you know good. What I mean? Like it feels, I don't know if you guys can remember this, but I wonder if, people out there will recall this, like that Denver Broncos rush offense back when Elway was kind of at the end there with Terrell Davis. Mm-hmm. They ran this zone style of offense, and Terrell Davis would be running in the wide open. Now, don't get me wrong. He would have to make a couple of guys miss at the line of scrimmage, and he would have to find the hole. But once you do, it looks like pregame. It looks as if you're running through almost like a practice drill is what this type of rush attack can create as far as the blocking scheme is concerned. And Kiffin, while he is perceived to be this creative genius and a lot of what he does is flash, people will tell you within the coaching circles that, You put him on a whiteboard and get him talking like offensive line, defensive line stuff, like he could be a top 3 offensive line coach in the country, I hear, just because of what he knows of what makes his offense work, right? And the best thing about Kiffin to me is that whatever you give him, he's going to make work. Mm-hmm. Right? You give me athletes that are offensive linemen, sweet. You give me big guys that are just going to clog up holes and need to stand up and pass protect, we'll dice you up like that as well. He's a football genius, Lane Kiffin. So the matchup of he and Matt House is going to be an interesting one to watch, because I think while LSU has not been tested in their rush defense like they will this weekend, right? I thought Auburn put some pressure on it, but not like they will be tested on Saturday. I wonder what Caskey and the film will say, how LSU matches up against this, because the numbers don't look good for LSU, but I don't think they've had the opportunity, and that might be a cop-out. That might be, 7 games in, that might be, an excuse. And maybe so, but I believe if game planned and with the emphasis being on stopping the run and really putting the highlight on, making that your first priority this week, I wonder how LSU is going to respond defensively. I really do, because Matt House has seemingly passed every test but the Tennessee one, right? I mean, that didn't go well or as expected, but I thought a lot of things were working against him, field position, special teams woes.
Quick changes.
But I just wonder what that to me is the most intriguing matchup of the day. Lane Kiffin versus Matt House. Because like we've said all week, if LSU is going to play like they did on Saturday night, no defense left on LSU's schedule scares me at all. Like, at all. There's nobody that gives me any fear if LSU is going to have the plan that they had on Saturday night and they execute it like they did. Much easier said than done. But that's the athletes that you have, and that's the problems they cause when the ball is in the air and when the ball is in their hands. Just make that happen. Again, easier to sit here in this chair and say this on Thursday morning rather than being in the box on Saturday night and calling the plays. But last Saturday was a hell of a roadmap of that's something to grow on. That's something that you can take away and say, hey, look, this is a high potent offense if we use the guys that need the ball in their hand that can change the scoreboard. Keyshawn changes the scoreboard one play. Malik Neighbors changes the scoreboard one play. Brian Thomas can change the game in one play. John Emery can do that. Feels like Jaden Daniels is believing that he can now do that. If he's got the confidence to take that to the field on Saturday, LSU's a totally different team. They're a totally different matchup. Look at the point spread. That's what the point spread is telling you. On Sunday morning when Vegas woke up, they thought that LSU was still kind of the LSU from 48 hours before that. We'll give them 3 points at home against Ole Miss. And then the more they thought about it, the more they went back and looked at the film and got people talking, and the talking heads were talking about LSU's wide receivers. Keyshawn goes for over 100. Jaden Daniels throws for 300. 3 through the air. Like, holy shit. Well, maybe, are we giving them points? We might need to
bring this thing back.
Yeah, whoa. They might need to be giving up the points now. And now here you are, just about 48 hours before kickoff, and LSU's a 2-point favorite. It's interesting to see this, and here, this is the week where you got to put this together back-to-back weeks, because if you regress and go back to who you were, 2 weeks ago, then that's who you are. Then that is who LSU truly is if they go out there on Saturday and they play with 2 left feet on offense, where they can't get going and everything looks clunky and everything looks difficult, and Keyshawn's not touching the ball, and they won't throw it up to Brian Thomas. You know, I mean, just things that obviously will work if you commit to it. And if they go back to 2 weeks ago, then, you know, you're right back to get to the finish line. Get to the offseason. Keep the recruiting class intact. Don't let it fall completely on your face. And, you know, get ready for year 2.
But if you beat Ole Miss, you're right in the thick of it for the West.
No doubt.
I think it's obviously. I think Florida was the best case scenario for what the LSU offense can look like, and I think Tennessee was the worst. There's somewhere in the middle where you can keep Jane Daniels comfortable and also keep his confidence up to where he'll be able to take those shots down the field. And if you try, I see what they wanted to do after seeing the Florida game. I can see why the Tennessee game happened, where look at these athletes that you have outside, like try to get them the football, good things are going to happen. They just pressed on the gas pedal a little too hard. Tennessee, they dial it back a little bit against Florida. Denbrock, I think, probably called his best game of the year in terms of like play calling, who they tried to feature, just everything they did to get Jane Daniels comfortable, use the run game when you had to. If you can, I think Florida was the perfect game. I don't think you can expect that every single week for LSU to play like that. But if you can play 80% of that, you have a chance to win nearly every game. Because when you go up against Ole Miss, the things that have hurt LSU this year are slow starts. Ole Miss does the opposite. They start fast. Lane's first 15 are probably the best in the business. Like, he scores on nearly every first drive, first 2 drives. He knows he has a plan every time they start the game on offense. LSU has started slow, giving up leads, and then come back. That's something that it's a little Tennessee-ish, where if you let it get out of hand early, you might be in for a little bit of a weary crowd in Tiger Stadium. But if you can hold just a little bit, kind of go back and forth with them, and just keep yourself in the game, that's when you let Tiger Stadium take over in the third and fourth quarter, and now you're in a dogfight. Because I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way, honestly. But I think it's going to be closer to it's going to be a lot of feeling each other out process, because this is chess, not checkers game for Lane Kiffin. Because they've seen all the film. They've seen what, obviously, all of the content coming out has been a byproduct of their run game. And Lane Kiffin's probably seeing, hey, I might go against Tennessee here, and maybe I throw it 35 times. I don't know. But I think it's like a chance for, they both know what's important. Ole Miss is undefeated, ranked 7th in the country. LSU, unranked, but still they control their own destiny to get to the SEC championship in the West. All you have to do is kind of take care of business. So it's not like any team's checked out of this one. I think it's a dogfight. Then the point spread reflects it.
Well, no, I think that LSU is about to get into 4-quarter games for the rest of the season. Like, I don't look at anybody that I believe LSU can boat race, and I also don't believe that LSU, with the capability that they have, like they showed on offense on Saturday, that they can get blown out, right? So, that's another thing that's really intriguing as a fan, or just somebody that's ready to watch, good football, is give me 4-quarter games every Saturday for the next 6 weeks, and, I'm all in. Right? I mean, and I'd imagine that the majority of you are out there, looking for that as well, because I believe that you're going to continue to see improvement from LSU. That's the one thing that I think is so gratifying and refreshing about Brian Kelly and his staff, is that they're not stopping until they find the right formula, right? And the people that work. And then those people are going to, improve. They still can't catch a punt. I get it. Look, I understand that they're going through some struggles, and they're going to have some things that are going to, take a little bit longer to smoke out than others. But all in all, we can agree LSU's getting better every week. Right? I mean, if I'm sitting over there in Tallahassee, for as much shit as I was, as they were talking a couple of weeks back, it looks like those two programs are kind of
lined up again.
You know what I mean? Kind of headed like opposite directions. LSU is improving. LSU is figuring out roles, figuring out who they are. And, I'm not meaning to bring back up the Florida State stuff. It's just, it's a comparison. Since week 1, how long ago does that game feel like? Oof. It feels like it was a decade ago. I mean, it feels like it was 4 teams ago at LSU. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like that was forever ago. So, it's going to be a game, man. It's going to be a great atmosphere. I think Tiger Stadium, 2:30. I mean, the weather has been so beautiful. You'd imagine that it'll be the same on Saturday. Blue skies. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. I thought the Tennessee game was a great atmosphere. You know what I mean? The football just didn't allow it to spark up and get moving.
Well, you talk about four-quarter games. Ole Miss's schedule has not allowed for them to have – they shouldn't be playing four-quarter games. They've played Troy, Central Arkansas, Georgia Tech, Tulsa, Kentucky, tough matchup, 22-19 they win, Vanderbilt, and Auburn. Ole Miss hadn't really played anybody yet. This is their first true test. Kentucky, I'll grant you that. That's a top 25 matchup. Kentucky's a pretty good team. However, you take that thing off the board, and they're not blowing these teams out. Like Tulsa, Ole Miss wins 35-27. Like you give up 28 to Vandy, and then Auburn 48-34. Like they're not. They get out to like I said, they get out to a quick start, but they let you linger, and they don't really put you away yet. You saw it with the Auburn game last week where they go up 21, you blink, and then Auburn's down 3.
Ole Miss is doing a series on YouTube called the Season.
Is it free?
It's free.
Oh.
And it's a 30-minute.
that.
It's a 30-minute in-depth weekly look at Ole Miss football. And I've been keeping up with it. And I started watching it because of what we were doing on Dawn of a Legacy. And hopefully you out there have watched Dawn of a Legacy. Check it out. Brought to you by Bank of Zachary and Lane Memorial Hospital out in Zachary. It's an in-depth look behind the scenes of the game that just featured 2 Baton Rouge high schools on ESPN, Woodlawn and Zachary. Their 2 quarterbacks, Eli Holstein, respectively, going to Alabama. Ricky Collins committed to LSU. Just cool behind-the-scenes stuff. It's on our YouTube page. It's over at WAFB Plus. Really proud of it, but we were looking for some roadmaps, right? Like going back and watching, obviously, stuff like Hard Knocks and QB1, and there's a feature 5-star, I believe, on Netflix that we were watching. But there's all types of these things out there that you can go on YouTube and find. And I was watching Ole Miss is doing, it's called The Season on YouTube, and it's just a weekly look at some of the stories. They have game highlights. They've got Kiffin's presser. They've got behind-the-scenes stuff on players where, this is an every week profile of Ole Miss football, so you got to get creative, right? I mean, you got to find the offensive lineman who plays music and loves to cook, certain stuff at the apartment to tell a story each and every week. I mean,
that gives haircuts.
That's the type of stuff. Yeah. I mean, you got to find that type of stuff. But it also kind of, it brings you to practice. It shows you who's, banged up. It shows you what some of the stuff that they're going through. So, I mean, if you want to get an in-depth look, to keep it all, I'd imagine that Kiffin's like, look, we're not showing anything game week. So, like right now you're watching Auburn week. This week leading into LSU, it's not real time. It's not like Hard Knocks where they're editing the stuff yesterday and putting it out today. This week you're kind of watching last week of what happened with Auburn. And one thing is for sure is that when you watch it, you can sense that, and I would venture to say that Ole Miss probably believed that by the time they got to LSU, that LSU would almost be like a dumpster fire, kind of like looking for the finish line, and not so much like Ogeron's dumpster fire or like Les Miles's dumpster fires, just year one roster depleted, outside storylines of LSU. Brian Kelly's got a weird accent and dances with recruits. You know what I mean? Whatever, the stuff that everybody was talking about in the offseason that LSU's just not going to be any good. And you look up and you're like, shit, like we got to get prepared for this passing game. Like what are we going to do with Brian Thomas? I'd imagine that Brian Thomas keeps people, defensive coordinators, like just stir crazy all week. Because, you're committing to Keyshawn, right? I mean, if you get beat by Keyshawn on Saturday, what are we doing? You're going to let the best player beat us? But now with Keyshawn emerging as the guy, so now you got to really like put the attention to him. Malik's, kind of your second possession type receiver, and then you've got this 6'6" freak who is jumping over everybody, catching everything, and within the 20-yard line mark, I mean, within the red zone, he feels unguardable.
Sick.
I mean, he feels like he is the toughest matchup on the field. I mean, really. So if you're telling me that you're committing 2 of your top cover guys to Keyshawn, you got to worry about Malik, and then you've got your 3rd or 4th best guy on Brian Thomas. I don't care if you're Alabama, Arkansas, Texas A&M, or Ole Miss. That's hell. I mean, that's a nightmare. That guy is better than every 3rd or 4th cover guy in the league. I am willing to put, the reputation of this show on the line for it. You know what I mean? Like,
Whoa.
yeah, that's tough. That's maybe too bold.